let's jump in. So thanks, everybody. As I mentioned, I am Savannah Seidel. I am the Vice President of Sustainability here at Better Earth. And just at a high level, it's important to anchor ourselves in the mission, right? Better Earth is a mission-driven organization striving to create 100% compostable packaging that makes sustainability goals accessible and regenerative circularity achievable within the food service industry. Big goal, but what we mean by that in simplest form is that we are working across the industry to design packaging that not only lessens our collective environmental impact, but truly helps revitalize our environment and community. And we hope you see that through the conversation today. Packaging is also just where we begin. We're proud to have conversations at a larger level and be part of leadership around tackling waste and fueling regeneration, including forums like our board leadership in the Biodegradable Products Institute. And that's a hat that we'll be wearing today too. For those that are not familiar, the Biodegradable Products Institute is the leading third-party certifier of compostable packaging. So our sustainability associate, Anisha, and I are really excited to gather together here at the end of Earth Month to anchor ourselves in a conversation around why we do what we do at Better Earth. We're all so passionate and eager for windows like these to share that passion with all of you. And through this quick time together, we will share some sneak previews of our 2025 impact report that is forthcoming, and most importantly, elaborate on the power of compostable packaging within a broader system, and wrap with a brief legislative outlook. We will be saving questions for the end of this webinar, but please, you've already familiarized yourself with the chat, with the Q&A function, add those in throughout the conversation. We'll incorporate them in as much as we're able through the talk, but we will save space at the end for Q&A, either to dive into the questions in the chat, as well as go off of mute. For more questions, just simply raise your hand. So with that, let's do it. First and foremost, 2025. We were all there. 2025 tested companies across every link of the value chain. It also clarified something for us at Better Earth. It helped us really ground ourselves in knowing that Better Earth is better built for the moment. We feel that we are designed for disruption as we were tested, right? Year in and year out, grounded in systems thinking and committed to transparency and accountability as we learn and improve. And we saw this play out in several ways, and you can see some of the highlights in this slide here. First and foremost, in our supply chain, we were proud to ramp up domestic fiber production by 247% year over year. That is incredible. It helps strengthen resilience for us as an organization, reduced our carbon footprint of our supply chain, and better support and service our customers. 2025 also saw a much more dynamic legislative landscape. Anisha will elaborate on that a little bit later in our presentation, but we are excited that we were able to build tools like our in-house legislative tracker that translate legislative complexity for our customers and our team into action. And so if you're curious for more on that, please let us know. And last but not least, we rolled up our sleeves to invest in our workplace and our broader community, spending 119 of our volunteer time off hours volunteering. Better Earth is a certified B Corp, which means that we align with the highest standards for environmental and social leadership, and efforts like these are emblematic of this certification and how we live our values as a company. We also launched some cool stuff. And the marketing team can share this story even better than I can, but we were so excited to launch innovative solutions like our product dispenser. If you haven't seen it yet, it is designed for high traffic food service environments and really helps reduce waste, limit touch points from a sanitation perspective, and make better material choices easier for operators and guests. So as I touched on, it's built to reduce waste. These types of dispensers eliminate the need for over 300 individual sachets for your typical cutlery kits. And it's powered by better materials. So you have a choice between PHA, which is an incredible new type of bio-based resin made by microorganisms through fermentation, or our pressed bamboo cutlery, which is a sturdy, tree-free fiber option with a great mouthfeel, personally, and made from rapidly renewable bamboo. We also made another big decision as a company. We continued to onboard and fully transition over to our unbleached packaging. So you'll begin to see this as it flows through our inventory, this unbleached option. So this was meaningful from an environmental perspective in many ways. First and foremost, by going tree-free and leaning into rapidly renewable bamboo, this helped us save an estimated 1,300 trees in 2025 alone. This raw material naturally sequesters over 60 metric tons of carbon dioxide per hectare annually during growth. And we secured our FSC certification to verify that that raw material is responsibly sourced. And lastly, from a manufacturing perspective, removing that bleaching stage also helps further reduce energy and water use. So with that, Anisha, I'll pass things over to you to kickstart our discussion on how compostables fit within the broader circular economy. So take it away.
Thank you so much, Savannah, for kicking things off. My name is Anisha, and I'm the Sustainability Associate here at Better Earth. I'm so excited to be here today, continuing our Better Earth Compostables crash course. We can't talk about compostables without talking about our current system. And our current system is not working. 70 years ago, plastic was barely used outside the military, and now we can't live without it. A new study shows that over the next 30 years, we may produce 4 times more plastic than we ever did. While plastic has offered incredible innovation through technology, medical advances, and offering convenient solutions to everyday problems, it remains dependent on a non-renewable resource, petroleum, which takes a vast amount of resources to source and process. Unfortunately, most plastic produced is single-use and used for an average of 30 seconds or less. When it is thrown away, we are also throwing away all the resources that went into creating the product. The sheer volume of plastic food service packaging now flooding our homes, trash bins, and environment is extending the limits of what our waste management systems can handle. And it's becoming an all-hands-on-deck situation to solve for it, including vast regulatory changes, voluntary plastic reduction, and the influx of alternatives. And speaking of systems, there is no way we can recycle our way out of the plastic problem. In fact, less than 5% of all plastic is recycled in the United States each year, and nearly 1/3 of all municipal solid waste in the US is packaging. The American recycling system isn't built to handle the vast volumes of recyclable waste it continuously receives. If only 5% of plastic gets recycled, where does the rest go? Our landfills, our environment, and our waterways. Along with all of this plastic entering our landfills, we can attribute a lot of landfill waste to food. In fact, 1/3 of all food produced in the US is wasted each year. And on top of this, 1/3 of our landfill is made up of packaging that comes from plastic and other materials. When organic material like food waste and yard debris goes into landfills, it releases methane, a greenhouse gas that is 25 to 85 times more potent than carbon dioxide, depending on specific landfill conditions. When plastic cannot be contained in a landfill, it ends up in the environment and breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces called microplastics. In fact, a new study shows that scientists found microplastic in every sample of dirt from our US national parks, our nation's most pristine and wild places. Aside from the environmental threats that plastic creates, they are also a threat to our health. Every week, we unknowingly consume the equivalent of a credit card's worth of microplastics through the food we eat, the water we drink, and even the air we breathe. These plastics are linked to a wide range of health issues, including respiratory problems, reproductive issues, birth defects, and even cancer. The very products designed for our convenience are becoming a direct threat to our health. As concerns around the environmental and health effects of plastic are growing, there are a tidal wave of sustainable solutions that are growing in the market. You've probably seen these names as you've shopped around: biodegradable, eco-friendly, natural, plant-based. Companies are creating confusion in the market by presenting a variety of sustainable alternatives to get your attention. This is considered greenwashing, the practice of making misleading or false claims about a product, service, or organization's environmental benefits. In fact, the word biodegradable is the most used greenwashing term, and luckily there is legislation to meet the growing concerns. So let's check in on those claims. While biodegradable and oxo-biodegradable products claim environmental attributes, they do not offer a truly circular end of life and typically require petroleum-based inputs. For example, this agave-based set of knives on the screen here may look plant-based or sustainable, but it is greenwashing at its finest. It's made up of a combination of plant-based and petroleum-based inputs, meaning it will end up in the landfill, creating microplastics for years to come. In fact, there are several things that we cannot always spot in packaging, like a common chemical called PFAS. PFAS represents a family of over 3,000 fluorinated chemicals that are used in packaging for heat and moisture resistance. The most studied chemicals in this class, PFOA and PFOS, have been associated with several health impacts, including cancer and developmental toxicity. PFAS are also highly persistent and can migrate into food directly from food service ware. So pulling back and taking this all in, it can feel pretty defeating as we think back to the original motivator for a different option and a better system. The good news is that with a problem so pervasive, there is finally nationwide momentum. Several states now have bans on various plastic materials like styrofoam or additives like PFAS. EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility, is a growing bill across the country, and we'll touch on this more at the end of the webinar. Finally, organics bills and truth in labeling laws are also taking shape. We'll dive into some of these specific definitions and cover the most pertinent legislation a little bit later on. Some more good news is that safer, sustainable plant-based options do exist, and I'd like to walk you through the tools to identify and differentiate them in the market. Certified compostable packaging is proving to be a powerful tool, working hand in hand with reusables and recyclables to move us closer to a circular economy. Compostable food service ware at a fundamental level must break down in 90 to 180 days in a commercial composting environment and leave nothing behind but nutrient-rich compost. Diving a little deeper, our compostable products are made from rapidly renewable resources that sequester carbon into the soil as they grow and again at their end of life when compostable packaging is composted in a facility. They also offer a double whammy for diversion. While conventional recyclable plastic must be free of any food waste or residue, compostable packaging and any food waste within it can all go in the same bin where accepted. That food waste is nitrogen gold for composters, and the fact that it can all go into one bin makes a smoother experience for consumers. In simplest form, compostable packaging helps close the loop from field to fork to field. And certifications are a critical tool to differentiate these types of packaging from the rest. BPI, as Savannah mentioned, is the largest third-party certifier of compostable food service packaging in North America. Their mark is not just a claim, but a trust, compliance, and risk management tool. A BPI mark means several things. The first being the product has been independently tested and verified to meet ASTM standards for either commercial or home compostability. The second is that there are no intentionally added fluorinated chemicals, heavy metals, and other endocrine disruptors present, so you can rest assured that this product is healthy for yourself and the soil. Additionally, as legislation like truth in labeling mandates are taking shape, the BPI logo supports compliance efforts and finally ensures compostable products are easily identified to reduce consumer confusion. When you are out in the market looking for compostables, there are 3 elements you should look out for: a beige, green, or brown coloring or stripe, the term compostable, and a BPI swirl or equivalent certification. Generally, a fiber product should follow at least one of these 3 elements, and for bioplastic products, look out for all 3. Additionally, here are some of the other certifications offered in the industry. CMA, or the Compost Manufacturing Alliance, follows a similar approach to BPI, with the additional layer of field testing to their approach with partner composters. And TÜV is a European certifier that also checks for PFAS, heavy metals, and degradation, and offers a home compostability certification. Outside of the BPI certification, Better Earth is proud to certify some of our collections with FSC, the Forest Stewardship Council. Over the past year, Better Earth has recertified many of our bamboo paperboard and molded fiber packaging with FSC. It's the leading certifier for responsible forestry that is trusted globally. The certification ensures that products are sourced from sustainably managed forests that protect local species and indigenous communities. We're actually updating our existing collateral at the moment, including our newly released 2026 product catalog to clearly denote FSC certified products. And in the meantime, for more information and to learn about current inventory, please contact your Better Earth sales manager. I'll transition it back to Savannah now to dive deeper into what our compostable products are made of.
Yes, thank you, Anisha. So, as legislation has ramped up, as adoption of compostable packaging has ramped up, it's spurred a lot of conversation, which is really good. But I would say with that conversation, there's been a little bit more confusion and perhaps even a little bit of misinformation around what compostable packaging is and what it isn't. And so I thought it might be helpful to ground us in the technologies that make compostable packaging what it is. For this, I'm going to focus on the two main categories that you see in the market, molded fiber and bioplastics, and start with molded fiber. So molded fiber, right, is one of the most common and visible types of compostable food service packaging, and it comes from its humble beginnings as the egg carton. We can all say that it's come a long way since it started. Technology has really grown. The two most common raw materials used to create molded fiber packaging are sugarcane bagasse and bamboo. These are incredibly rapidly renewable materials. Take sugarcane bagasse. It is actually the byproduct of sugar extraction process that is traditionally landfilled or incinerated. So we're able to divert that from the landfill into a pulp to make sustainable packaging. Similarly, at Better Earth for our bamboo, it's sourced from the byproducts of the bamboo furniture industry, therefore reimagining yet another material that would otherwise be wasted. And unlike lumber, that typically takes 40 years to grow until it can be harvested, bamboo can grow up to 3 feet per day. And beyond bamboo and sugarcane, there's so much innovation happening too. As an example, at Better Earth, we've been working with partners to bring more compostable manufacturing to the United States. Through our Farmers Fiber program, we work with a network of growers to source perennial grasses like switchgrass, sorghum, miscanthus, to grow that product. These perennials require minimal tillage and have taproots that grow 2 stories underground. As they're continuing to grow, they're sequestering in nutrients and sequestering carbon dioxide. And as you can see here, it can sequester up to a ton of carbon per acre per year. If you pull that across our acreage, that's the equivalent of planting over 200,000 trees per year. That's incredible. That raw material is then dried, pulped, and thermoformed locally in Tennessee, creating a hyperlocal and resilient supply chain. This kind of innovation also matters. It's time sensitive and pretty pertinent. Tennessee landfills are actually filling up rapidly. Many are expected to reach capacity within the next 3 years. So the state is now looking for more scalable, community-driven ways to divert waste, including recycling and composting. We're supporting this shift by not only investing in Tennessee-made compostable packaging, but also by directly purchasing compost from the local composter, Compost Co., and applying it to the farmland that grows that raw material. So as of a couple weeks ago, we will have procured enough compost to fill 6 tractor trailers, which is really exciting. And we've learned a lot along the way. Now, let's touch on bioplastics. So, trigger warning, this is going to include a little science, but no lab coats are required. I personally promise I do not have one. So if I can share it, I feel confident in your ability to share it too. I also want to keep things interactive in the chat. I know it's easy, we're all on computers. Say yes if you're a little, if you're confused or curious around how bioplastics are made or how they're different from plastics. So put yes in the chat if you're curious about this. We are going to dive in. So traditional or conventional plastics like polyethylene, polypropylene, and polystyrene are built around strong carbon-carbon backbones. So again, no lab coats are required, I promise, just follow the image. These bonds are built to last. And because that was what was wanted in packaging, right? So they're designed to be extremely stable and resistant to heat, moisture, and microbial activity, which so happen to also be the same conditions present in a composting environment. So if you follow the logic of this graphic, when conventional plastics enter a composting facility, they never fully biodegrade, but rather crack and fragment into smaller and smaller pieces. And that underlying polymer structure remains intact, right? So you see here, right, the C and C at top, it's the same at the bottom. This is what's leading to those persistent microplastics that Anisha was speaking about earlier. So now we pull over to what bioplastics are made of. They look and feel like plastics. They're transparent. They offer a lot of incredible properties that make them seem very similar to plastics, but their underlying structure is very different. So they employ polyesters, which are polymers linked together with ester bonds, which are found in nature. So you know how leaves can feel waxy? That's because of a polyester. So for compostable materials, these bonds are strong enough for everyday use, but then fully come apart in an industrial composter's conditions. So as you can see in this next graphic, those bonds right here ultimately break apart in a composting environment into carbon dioxide and water, which are exactly what a compost pile's microbes need to fuel up and help plants grow. So we're talking a lot about how compostable products break down in the composting environment, but what is composting after all? So we're going to give a bit of a one-on-one on this too. Composting is the process of breaking down organic materials, such as food and yard waste, into a nutrient-rich soil amendment. At the highest level, there are two main categories, backyard and commercial composting. Also throwing it out in the chat, have you ever tried backyard composting? Just type backyard if you've ever tried backyard composting. I'm curious. We have tried, we are nerds about it. So if you have any questions about that, definitely feel free to let me know. Amazing. See, we got some backyard composters here. Backyard piles typically consist of a family's food scraps and are smaller, less hot, and more variable. For example, a family 4 will create more food scraps than an apartment bin. My uncle's bin is going to look different than your aunt's or, brothers. And also the temperature within your area. The temperature between Mark's backyard pile might look different than Bill's in Massachusetts. And a home compostability certification is meant to really understand that variability, and therefore has longer timelines for breakdown of home compostable products within those environments. And a quick tip within a home composting environment, I definitely recommend shredding your food scraps and packaging because that helps create more oxygen and speed up breakdown. Now, in a commercial composting facility, you are gathering a community's worth of food scraps. So you're able to create larger, hotter, and microbially active environments through a wide variety of technologies, ranging from the windrow piles that you see here on the screen to in-vessel systems or digesters. At its core, a commercial style composting pile can reach up to 155 degrees Fahrenheit. You can literally see the steam coming off of that. And that's because the microbes are working. They are bouncing back and forth, breaking down that food waste and packaging. Depending on the scale and the technologies used, composters can transform the feedstocks into finished compost within as little as 45 days. But as Anisha mentioned earlier, the standard for commercially compostable packaging is 90 to 180. And when we're doing that, there are a ton of benefits, a myriad of benefits across environment, health, and economy. As you see here, just by composting, we're reducing greenhouse gas emissions, reducing the risk of methane entering the environment, increasing water retention, reducing erosion, and on farm environments acting as a natural fertilizer. For our health, it helps reduce volume to landfills, which is really important. It supports nutrient cycling back into our soils. And when we have healthier soils, that means healthier people because the food that we eat is sucking in all of the nutrients that it's getting from the soil. And then last but not least, the economy. Composting has 4 times more jobs than landfill environments. Compost supports local agriculture and it fosters a resilient local economy because we're keeping all of that stuff and creating new life within our local community. But I've got to touch on this. Say yes if you've navigated or thought about this question. What's the point if I don't have access to composting? Yes? Have you navigated this question? I think it's, yep, that's what I thought. It's a good one, and it's an elephant in the room, and it's really important for us to understand because there's a point and a big one for having compostable packaging. First and foremost, compostables help us move away from petroleum-based plastic. They start with renewable plant-based materials like the ones that I mentioned that sequester carbon at the source. 1 ton of carbon per acre per year, 60 metric tons of carbon per hectare for bamboo, while offering an alternative to petroleum-based plastic and persistent microplastic pollution. Second, infrastructure follows demand. Let's think about a train going down as the train tracks are being built. Composting access doesn't come overnight, and it doesn't come in a vacuum. It grows when cities, businesses, venues, and customers show that there's a real market and a need for food scraps and compostable packaging collection, right? We are building the volume. Third, food service needs a better end of life option. If you think back to our original mission, we are there to help address food service environmental impact and create regenerative circularity. Well, if we think about the solutions that are offered today, food soiled items realistically cannot be recycled. That food contamination on a recyclable packaging is a contaminant, and most often that contamination needs to go to the landfill. However, with composting, they give us a pathway to capture both the packaging and that food waste in one place and offering a seamless one bin solution for customers, thereby reducing friction and increasing adoption. And finally, certification matters. BPI certified compostables are designed for commercial composting environment and third-party verified to do so, and that helps separate credible, tested products from greenwashed alternatives. So the point is not that compostables are a perfect solution everywhere. That's not what I'm trying to say. The point is that they are a practical tool for building the system we need, one that starts with renewable materials, supports better recovery infrastructure, and moves food service away from a take, make, waste model. And that's what we're all about. And even better, that question is getting less and less relevant every single day. Better Earth, as you can see, is passionate about ensuring that our products are composted to meet their fullest potential. A few years ago, we were getting a little frustrated because we felt we couldn't answer confidently where our customers should compost our materials. That bothered us. So we rolled up our sleeves and started collecting the data and ended up inadvertently over the last 3 years building what is one of the most comprehensive nationwide data sets on U.S. compost infrastructure today. The results are inspiring, as you can see here. We found that there are more than 2,500 composters, haulers that then pick up the waste, and drop-off locations across the United States. And there's at least one public space to compost your food scraps in all 50 states. Better Earth maintains a search engine on our website so that anybody can find free, accessible compost drop-off sites by simply plugging in their zip code. And thank you, Anisha, for sharing that in the chat. But for more detailed information for commercial scale infrastructure or haulers to support customers, reach out to us. We've got that information and it is here as a resource for you. With that, I would love to shift things back over to Anisha to give us a brief legislative outlook to wrap up our time together.
Thank you, Savannah. Circling back to the conversation around packaging legislation, with growing legislation taking shape around the US, companies like Better Earth can't just design for compostability performance anymore. We must also layer this with what is complying at a regional and local level. One particular piece of legislation that is top of mind for packaging companies right now is EPR, which I'm sure you all have heard out in the field. It stands for Extended Producer Responsibility. It's a new law that holds manufacturers accountable for the products they produce and sell into the market. Manufacturers are now expected to pay fees into states with active EPR laws that will fund the end-of-life disposal of their products in the form of recycling or composting infrastructure. Generally, the more sustainable the product, the lower the fees. The more unsustainable the product, the higher the fees. PFAS regulations require products to have less than 100 parts per million of fluorine. The good news is that the BPI certification guarantees products fall under this threshold. Truth in labeling laws are also popping up around the country. They require manufacturers to include certain color schemes like beige, brown, or green stripings or colorings, as well as a third-party certification logo like BPI to reduce confusion for consumers and increase responsible disposal. Finally, organics mandates require businesses that generate a certain amount of organic materials per year and are within a certain radius of a composting facility to compost their food waste. So looking at the EPR landscape in the US at the moment, there are currently 7 EPR packaging bills that have passed till date. And the states that have EPR packaging bills are California, Colorado, Oregon, Washington, Minnesota, Maine, and Maryland. In 2025, 14 states introduced EPR packaging legislation, including states like New York, New Jersey, and Hawaii. And the reach of packaging EPR is now at 20% of the US population. We only anticipate this number will grow in the years to come. Finally, I wanted to round out with some additional legislation for you all to watch out in the field for. I'll start off with some legislation that is passed and in effect. So the Virginia and Illinois polystyrene bans were passed and are in effect as of January 2026, and they mandate that polystyrene is no longer permitted for use by food vendors. In Washington, the single-use plastic ban took effect in January of 2026 as well, and that bans petroleum-based single-use plastic bags, but permits compostable and reusable alternatives. The Minnesota Truth in Labeling Law also went into effect in January of this year and ensures clear labeling on compostable packaging. And the final 2 bills are pending. So New Jersey's Skip the Stuff law mandates that single-use plastic foodware accessories can only be provided upon request to consumers. That is set to take effect in August of this year. And California's AB 1201 is only set to go into effect in June 2027, but we wanted you to have it all on your radar as there are discussions on the advancement of that bill. Finally, we encourage you to check out our US legislative map on our website. I'll send the link in the chat in a moment. So you guys can stay up to date on the ever-changing policy landscape. And please email sustainability@becompostable.com if you have any specific questions on legislation in your area. We would be more than happy to look into those for you. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed our crash course on compostables and are so grateful for your partnership and support. It truly takes a village to make impactful change happen, and we thank you for going on this journey with us. Together, let's close the loop.